All right. Good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett, and staff. Lobby is open. The recording has begun.
Thanks, Dustin. Good afternoon, everybody. We will convene the LCB's Executive Management Team meeting for Wednesday, December 8th. Member Hauge is on leave at this point, may join us later. And we will jump right in. We had on the agenda approval of minutes, but we're going to have to postpone that. They need a little work. So our first presentation today comes from CFO Jim Morgan for an update on the launch of CCRS. How's it going, Jim?
It's going.
Good. Okay.
The team worked through the weekend resolving a couple of late-breaking issues and successfully launched on Monday as scheduled. Now that's exciting for us, and the system is performing as designed, but it's not time for a victory lap because we recognize that true success is when the industry is fully engaged and fully involved and successfully using the system. We've brought in a number of extra resources in IT to handle inquiries from the industry. Most of them seem to be around gaining access to the system. So these are folks that have just now come to the table and are working to get into the system so that they can upload their files. We have had a couple of more issues this week that the team is triaging and attending to. No showstoppers that are putting the brakes on the entire industry. As expected, the manifest issue going from completely automated to a more manual system is one of the issues that we're hearing about. The feedback that we've gotten so far ranges on one end of the spectrum from congratulations LCB on a flawless execution, the other end of the spectrum, things that I can't repeat here. But particularly in those that are tinged with anxiety and anger, possibly, we're working hard to sort through those to make sure that we understand where the real issues are, where we need to address things in the system, what our opportunities are there. So we're paying attention to all of them and trying to read them without tone when that's possible. So we have had 612 as of this morning. There's probably more now. A little over 600 of our licensees, about a third, have logged into the system. That doesn't mean they've all uploaded files. Some of that is a licensee getting into the system so they can indicate who their integrator is. And we've got a couple of the larger integrators that are still making preparations. They haven't really hit the system hard on behalf of their licensees yet, but we're expecting that soon. So activity in the system has steadily increased through the week. The servers and the infrastructure are handling the volume. I just met with our project manager, and I think one of the really positive things that she mentioned was, aside from the folks that are contacting our support desk, when a licensee uploads a file, if there's a problem with that file and it can't be uploaded into the system, an error message is generated back to that licensee. And the positive thing is that in quite a number of cases, folks are getting their error messages, they're resolving their issues, and then turning around and successfully uploading their files without contacting our help desk. So that part of the process is working. We are gathering some, as I mentioned right up front, the system is effectively working as designed. Through the testing process and through the implementation, we are gathering input on things that we may want to change. and improve the efficiency, improve the effectiveness of the system. But those those would be changes to the system rather than a bug that the system's not working the way it was intended. So we're queuing those up. The manifest process, and I think I mentioned when I spoke to you last, is one of those hot topics that we are committed to addressing as soon as practical. Now that we're live, as soon as the dust settles here from the initial go live, we're going to look at ways to make that more efficient. Right now, it's kind of a one at a time upload and manifest, and we're going to look for ways that we can improve that process for integrators. So, all in all, we're about where we expected to be right now. Yes, the system is working the way we intended, and yes, there's a fair amount of disruption that any change, no matter how smooth it is the disruption is going to happen in the industry. So we're just working as hard as we can to help minimize that disruption, help people get past their issues and work through any additional system issues that might come up.
Okay. Great. Yeah. First, you and George and your teams and everybody on this team have working as hard as they can. Absolutely. And it's been clear to us in the agency how hard you all in communications to working through the launch and continuing to. And that is a big part of why it's gone as well as it has. I was going to say what you just said, that we are where you have told us we would be at this point, and I think that shows a good, realistic view of this. There is no victory dance here. We have bugs, we're working on it, and I appreciate your ability and the team's ability to take the information you're getting, and as you said, trying to filter out some of the attitude. I'm not always as well adjusted as you, Jim, but that's what we need to do. We need to find out where are the pinch points and try to fix them and address them. And I'm glad that we're staying on it as and treating this like it is a very live thing. One little bit of a question. I don't know if you had a chance to listen in at the board meeting today. Okay, we had some comments about it, and one of them was a request for increased and on an ongoing interaction with stakeholders on this, is a steering committee of some. Is there such a thing already envisioned on an ongoing basis? Is there something we can do there to formalize that communication loop?
We haven't made specific plans for what that looks like, but I do agree that that's a really important way to engage with the industry.
Great.
So we'll be looking at what that looks like and how we can make sure that they have a chance to engage with us.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned that some of the integrators have done more than others just based on where their clients are. So they're sort of a little more of a high-end user, and that this is their business as opposed to somebody who's trying to run a cannabis business and doesn't necessarily understand the IT world. Have you gotten any sense of their feedback, and are there things that the integrators have pointed out just since Monday that we're addressing, or is it the same sort of issues that we've seen all along?
There have been some specific issues that we would call bugs, and the team has been working to address those. There have not been very many. I think 2 or 3. So the feedback that we are getting from the integrators that are engaged has been useful, and we have been acting on some of it.
Great, good. Member Garrett, any questions or comments?
No, you covered what I was going to bring up from the board meeting this morning.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just another comment from the board meeting, and something that as part of our evaluation and working through issues, one thing I've experienced is oftentimes the feedback that we get or the suggested changes or improvements are accompanied with, this would be a simple fix. Why haven't you done it already? And leading up to go live, we did what we could, but some of those kinds of things would have disrupted the schedule. It would and so and some things, and some of the feedback I provided when folks have made that observation to me directly is that while something may look simple from one vantage point, when we start to work through it, we have to work through all of the security issues, all of the systems issues, and it may or may not be a simple fix. So we're evaluating everything thoroughly, taking those suggestions, those recommendations, and when they've identified bugs and working to address those as best we can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for getting us to this point, to the launch, and for the incredible work I know you've been putting in, you and George and the others, and the incredible hours. So it's appreciated. And sorry, it's not over for you yet, but we'll get there at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Our next update comes from Chris Thompson, the agency's legislative director. Chris.
Good afternoon,
Good.
Mr. Chairman, Member Garrett, and assembled team. I'll be pretty brief. There isn't a lot to update you on. Our two agency request legislative proposals are still pending under review at OFM and the governor's office. So no new developments to report there. Nothing's changed since the last time we talked about that. We are gearing up towards session. Pre-filed bills started coming out Monday. There's one or maybe two so far that we want to take a little bit closer look at, not very much. We're also setting up a series of meetings with legislators, both kind of in general, to keep in touch with leadership from policy committees, as well as, more specific things. We were asked for a meeting by the Senate committee chair to talk about our priorities for the coming session, for instance. So that's going on. We're also looking at, we reconvened our legislative team last week. We're beginning to be asked by stakeholders for feedback on proposals they're going to bring to the next session. So there are a couple of things in that area that we're discussing, and we'll continue to discuss prior to deciding, what's the agency's feedback or any concerns or any position that we might plan to take on those proposals. So there'll be a lot happening pretty soon, but right now we're kind of doing what I described. That's our focus, getting up to speed with proposals coming and getting better connected with legislators who are, hearing from other stakeholders. We want to also find out what they're hearing and what areas they think maybe we can help them in this upcoming session. So far, there's nothing on the table in terms of requests for agency work session presentations. We did those in November in the Senate and in October in the House committees. So that's what I have. If there are questions, I'll take a shot at answers.
I don't have. I just will let you know. Board members have also gotten some requests from organizations and others asking us to look at legislation for next session. We'll just make sure we're all in the loop on those things too, and make sure that we tell you and you let us know what you're hearing. Be great.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Licensing with Director Becky Smith.
Well,
Hello.
good afternoon. So I just want to start and share that yesterday during my division meeting, we had invited 3 licensees to join us. That was, yeah, I always get to hear from our licensees about our investigators and either how well they're doing or if there's issues or barriers. But I thought it was an important time since we're ending the year for our investigators to hear from our licensees. And I have to tell you, it was wonderful. It was well accepted that we got to hear about how the process for our restaurant, how that was working. That I asked about gaps, 0 gaps for both those restaurants from our Brewers Guild. They, of course, gave us all types of accolades about how well we were doing. And then we had a retailer that from Cannabis join us as well. So kind of tried to hit everyone that we could. We were probably there was probably too many folks that we had because we only have an hour, but it was really good information. I would really, I encourage us to do more of that as an agency. I think it's helpful to hear, like I said, how we're doing, that where there we could improve, and right now, especially because we're working remotely, if there's any service gaps. So again, well received from my staff. I certainly appreciated the licensees coming in and spending an hour with us. So I did want to share that with you. Also, that, as you know, we started receiving applications for 1480. So that's our curbside delivery, cocktails to go. So far, we've received 75 applications. So not a lot. We have about 11,000 licensees that this affects. So certainly a beginning of what we know is more to come here soon. We've actually also created, and I mentioned this last week, that we created an online resource so folks can go online, our licensees, to learn more about, that the application, who this affects, who the bill affects, that the new requirements, instructions on how to apply for an endorsement, and a big thank you to the communications team. They worked really hard with licensing staff on making sure we're getting this out. So we were doing, that 1480 hit and then CCRS hit at the same time. So a lot of work for our whole agency as a whole, but certainly our customer service staff and our communications staff have done a fantastic job trying to make sure that all of this is going as smoothly as possible, knowing that we certainly could have expected the number of phone calls that we're getting from CCRS, but certainly we're figuring out how to help those folks. That our customer service manager has done a couple of trainings, and so speaking engagements, that we've had some pretty large events that she's gone out to. So Washington State Festival of Events Conference, there was about 55 people and in person. So more than last year, I believe it was virtual. And then the Washington State's Brewers Guild Conference in Puyallup. And of course, for the Brewers Guild, our enforcement side joins us for those events. So it really is a collaboration of training when we're out there in the field. We have, as you guys know, we have 4 pilots currently going on, but I don't know that I've shared with you that what we're doing with those pilots, because I don't want a year to go by and the board and licensing and enforcement not know what's going on or how things have been progressing, any surprises. So we've already sent out an invite to schedule 6-month check-ins. So we want to see how things are going, that enforcement already has a process in place of visiting those venues during times of, during football games, concerts, or other key events that are happening. That remember Climate Pledge, University of Washington, Levy at Lumen Field, and Blade and Timber are all pilots right now. So it's good for us to track them, to be able to come back, and if there's any issues that we're having along the way, that we're able to correct them versus get to the end and there'll be any surprises. We don't want any surprises with these pilots for either ourselves or for those licensees that are piloting more service areas or different types of service areas in those venues. So if you have any questions along the way, or if you'd like us to update you once those 6-month dates have come and passed, I'm happy to have Nicola or myself do that either at an EMT or whatever is convenient.
I think we should do that. It'd be great to do that either at a caucus or EMT.
Okay, fantastic. And then we are also exploring, so we've had a couple of reach outs since we've done some changes in our cannabis, how we're processing our alterations. I had a couple of folks reach out and say, hey, we have another idea. Can you guys explore this for us? And so we're exploring being able to process our change in ownership and our change in location at the same time. It really has been a system issue. So it's something our system hasn't been able to do. It's easier for our investigators, certainly easier for the licensees if we can make that happen at the same time. So through everything that's going on with IT and that our staff were also doing some testing around whether or not this can be a possibility. I would, that was something that's so important that people have been asking for a while. I would hate to wait for S&P. So we're going to see if we can push some of this through now. Working with BLS as well to see who it actually affects if we make those changes at the same time. But just know that that's coming. I'm looking forward to making some tweaks in our cannabis applications and in our process throughout the next year. And then I'm going to say, certainly not last but not least, is our criminal history rule changes. So it went in effect on 10/2. We're making sure that we have done a lot of education around the history of the form, as we now require applicants to attest to their criminal history that's ran as a penalty for failure to disclose. So that's been eliminated now. And so I think that's a positive thing, both for our current applicants, certainly for our social equity applicants, but that's also a lot of education going on for our staff and for our enforcement staff as well. I think that's it for me.
Okay. Yeah, boy, you guys are involved in so much. And I know licensing always does a great job, but you should know, just recently, people inside and out, I mean, people are raving about the work you guys are doing. You were at the Alcohol Advisory Council. People couldn't have been, sort of more complimentary and pretty thorough about their engagements with licensing and other parts of the agency. But your processing times, the work on 1480, the equity work, all of those things. So thanks for all of that, and thank the team for us too, because it's really evident the level that you're performing right now.
Oh, well, thank you.
And as I said, Jim, I know it's not done either. It will continue, but it is appreciated.
And I just want to echo that, Becky. It's really, we're hearing a lot of positive things, and it's really, we really appreciate it.
And
well, thank you. Team effort and great organization. So
invite me to those meetings in the future if you think about it. I'd love to be able to sit in and hear stakeholders interact with the team and to hear the team.
Oh, absolutely.
And if I can make it, I will. I would, and all divisions, actually. I'm still always eager to come and listen. So don't be afraid to reach out through Dustin. Appreciate it.
All right, and we have quite a bit going on with social equity, but I think I'll wait for probably the next EMT to provide an update because we're still moving ahead with our process. So.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think that's something we're going to need a fair amount of time to talk about as well. So.
I think so.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Enforcement and education, and there's Director Brady now. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. While Dustin brings up the slides, I just wanted to share with you some of the partnerships enforcement and education has been working with other divisions in the industry on many projects, specifically with licensing on that right now, as we present to you guys, our teams are working together to make sure enforcement and education has the most recent information about the work Director Smith's team has been doing with the social equity so that we're up to speed on that when it's time for us to engage in that project. And then also working with us to come up with a plan to make sure that we're active in reviewing those pilot projects that have been approved. We're working with the HR and DEI manager on our hiring processes, working with finance on some of our trainings and information sharing, and then communications most recently on CCRS, just as we communicate to the industry and our staff as well to make sure everyone's equally informed. And I know, Board Chair, that you have our ride along coming up soon. So I'm excited that you're doing that to see the work that we're doing in the field and to meet our licensees. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's Monday for a cannabis
Yeah.
tour. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're excited to hear your feedback. So as you know, I'm going to present stats for November for the Enforcement Education Division. Did we skip a slide, Dustin? Next one. There we go. So we'll talk about licensee support and education. As you can see, we're still prioritizing getting out in the industry, out with our licensees and having educational contacts and documenting the hours and number of people that are receiving that information. Over 1,700 contacts and over 300 hours of education, and that's 2,700 people that receive that information. You can see that broken down into each of the industries, and that's just great that we're getting out there and doing that work. And really quickly, just a brief summary of the topics that we're providing education on. 53% of our education was directly related to topics that are considered public safety topics. We had 385 complaints logged with our division. 75% of those were COVID related. We had 25 complaints in cannabis, 332 in liquor, and 28 in tobacco and vapor. And then you can see that there, just the increase and decrease over the months of cannabis complaints, and these are not related to COVID. The majority of these are related to youth access and canopy in this month. Now you can see liquor complaints, not including COVID, was at 66. And then specifically tobacco vapor for the month of November was 23. And then this is just a visual representation of, you can see that 77% of our complaints were related to COVID. So when you start looking at the total complaints at 385, and then there's 286 of those by number were related to COVID.
And it's creeping back up. It
Yes.
looks like just right. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so you're going to see as we restarted our compliance checks that some of those public safety AVNs are creeping back up as well. So we had 89 of those in the liquor industry, 14 in tobacco vapor, and 4 in cannabis. We start talking about alternative dispute resolution. You can see that in November, 32 of our AVNs in the liquor industry were paid uncontested. 1 went straight to formal hearing. 34 of the 34 were resolved at informal hearing, and none of them went forward to a formal hearing from the informal. And then for cannabis, 2 uncontested paid, 2 straight to formal hearing, and then 3 resolved at informal hearing. Liquor compliance check rates were at 70%. So you can see that as we've restarted over the last 5 to 6 months, that has ranged for liquor in the 70 to 81% range. Some of that you can also see starting some delivery compliance checks, both as we navigate forward with the industry and as we learn about conducting those too. They're pretty complicated and detailed. The response from the industry, just so you're aware, board chair and board member, has been positive, and they want to work with us to make sure that they are achieving compliance. Cannabis compliance checks in November were at 84%. Tobacco and vapor compliance checks were up to 79%. And then just to give you some ideas, the numbers that numbers of licensee we're visiting out there and having contact with each month, you can see that they made contact with 1,950 premises in the liquor industry in the month of November. And then 238 of them in the cannabis industry in the month of October. Apparently, this is not letting us view the November numbers, so that's going to be a surprise apparently next time. And then for tobacco and vapor, 224. So we are really getting out there and spending some time with our licensees, doing that education and having contact. I've enjoyed some time doing ride-alongs myself, learning a lot from our licensees and from our officers. And so thank you very much. And if you don't have any questions for me, have a wonderful day.
I've got just one quick one, maybe for next time. The alternative dispute resolutions. I'd be interested to see kind of what the trend line is looking like in that. Are we having fewer going to formal? What's that curve look like? Because, in one of those, there was, I think, one case that went to formal, and that's, of course, or zero, and that would be the goal, of course, to resolve it otherwise. But I'd be interested to see what it looks like in whatever period you can give us a snapshot next time.
Yeah, I'll do a trend line instead of comparing to average next time.
That'd be great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it. Brian Smith, Communications Director for Communications and Media Update. Hello, Brian.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett. As you've already heard, we've been collaborating with the other divisions and the other directors on a number of key issues. Just to highlight some of that stuff, CCRS, which you already heard with Jim. It's my number one priority at the moment to make sure that we're ready to be responsive and do whatever we need to do on the communications end. As you've heard him say, we meet twice a day in an incident command meeting to assess where we're at and what's needed. And I'm always saying at that meeting, whatever we need to do, and trying to glean ideas from that if we need to be able to communicate something, especially if it's something that a licensee could do to help them either get into the system or figure out what it is they need to do on the fly. We're working with Director Brady and the Enforcement Division on informal adjudications to be able to, like, the board has a page of its formal adjudications and how they result. It was at Director Brady's idea, actually, to show the people, not only our own staff, but licensees, how informal adjudications work out across a month. If they hear of a certain violation notice, how is that resolved? And so we're going to begin posting those to our website, working with her team now to make it easy to follow, et cetera, and have that up probably in early January. And so they do about 80 informal adjudications a month, so it'll be a much lengthier list than what the board puts out. But we have a system that we think we'll be able to put into place that we think will be good for anyone that wants to be able to go. It's a good, transparent move, and it's a good suggestion by her. Yep. As you know, is that enforcement, like many other places across the country right now, are trying to fill up their ranks. And so we've been working with them on targeted type of recruitments. So Brad Rinke, our graphic designer, and I have been doing some work overseeing the types of things. Like they've done some posters, et cetera. Brad and our team went out and took a number of pictures, kind of action shots and stuff that we can be able to use to convey the diversity of our division, you know, the kind of work that we do, what our people look like, that I've been wanting for some time. So I'm very glad to be able to have that now that we can use for any number of things. I got a request this morning. They're going to be doing a video rollout too, and they're going to work with a contractor, I think, to produce a video for recruitment. And they're also talking about some paid media on the radio side. And so I'll be involved with them to make sure that our message is consistent and the right thing that we want to be able to do. We're going to kick that off next week. As you heard Becky talk about the 1480 work, again, that's been ongoing with us. Her team really does a bang up job in making it easy for us to be able to carry out kind of what their original vision was. We overhauled the Open Washington page, which is where we had all of the allowances that we were always revising as the COVID went along, right? And we had to make changes to it all the time. As now that 1480 has rolled out, we have worked with them to give it a clean sort of look. You can tie in directly to how they can get these endorsements now. So it's moved beyond just the allowance. Now it's the ability to be able to actually make that part of your license. And they made our work a lot easier. Brad just pretty much had to work with them to do a lot of work on the website, but I'm happy with how that turned out. And good partnerships, I think, going along, as you've heard from others as we've moved through this week. And then just the last couple of things. We're working on the annual report, which is something we're always doing at this time of year. It's in good shape. We expect to have a draft out here fairly soon and have it published certainly by Christmas or that week. So, and then lastly, I guess on the media front, it's very slow for us, as you've heard me repeat in the last couple of months. Maybe one a day, 5 to 6 a week. That's more than a lot of agencies get, but to us, it's like, you know, nothing. And so mostly it's things asking for data, isolated things around the state pertaining to maybe a liquor license or to a cannabis license of something that they've heard that we follow up on, as opposed to any real themes or trends that we're seeing coming through. I don't really think it's the time of the year. I don't know exactly what it is. We know that the media environment has changed over time, but I don't expect to see that we're going to see a real trend in these last few months. But I don't remember it as being this slow with media work in my many years that I've been here. So, which is unusual, I think, unique.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any questions or anything I can help with?
I know I would just take the moment to point out that, you know, given how slow media is, and it's just what your presentation was a great example of how you and Rick and the team view communications. You're not a media office, it's a communications office. So you're involved with licensing, you know, talking about 1480. You're involved with CCRS and a instrumental at the, you know, sort of command center level. It's communications is what we all do all the time with whoever you're talking to. It's not spin, it's not media. And so I just really, you know, think that's a valuable piece of what this agency has always done, is just put a value on what's the best way to communicate this information to whoever that audience may be. Sometimes it's ourselves, where it's internal. Sometimes it's legislative. Sometimes it's stakeholders, whatever. So anyhow, that's what you guys do so well. It's great.
Thank you, David. You get it for sure.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Brian. Now for a general agency update, our Deputy Director, Tony Hood. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Postman, Member Garrett. I just wanted to first mention that I attended the licensing division meeting that Director Smith talked about. It was a great meeting. You can really tell that her team enjoys working together. It was very informative, but also there was some fun in there as well. And it was also very helpful to see the interaction with the licensees that came to speak. They just have a very easy conversation with the staff members, and all the feedback was positive. You can tell that they know these people and have worked with these people in a very cooperative way. And so I really enjoyed seeing that. And Director Smith made sure to again ask if there was any gap in service during our remote work and they did not identify the licensees that were there, that didn't mention anything, but rather just gave positive feedback. So great job on the licensing division part, and that was great to be able to listen to that meeting. The other thing that I have today is process improvement. Just an update on what we're doing. We have a process improvement team. They call themselves the Lean Champions. There's about 10 members of this team. I am starting to go to this meeting as well. In 2019, the agency decided to do process improvement focusing on the division level. They have been doing process improvement in Lean since 2013, but they focused more on the division level in 19. This process improvement team, which is led by Edmund Lee, meets quarterly now, and they share information about what they're doing within their divisions towards process improvement. They talk about what they're hearing from Results Washington and how our data can be reported when appropriate to Results Washington. And so that's a great group of people. And they also inspire others, I think, to work on process improvement and to participate in the statewide annual Lean Conference. We had a huge number of participants this year. We had 136 LCB staff members participate in the Lean Conference. 2 years ago, we only had 40 people participate in that in 2019. So to go up to 136 was great. And Edmund attributes part of that to a lot of advanced planning and communication and promotion of that event. They also had a good debrief. The process improvement team had a debrief where they talked about some of the things they learned from the Lean Conference. They really enjoy the virtual aspect of the Lean Conference and the fact that it's spread out over several days. So you have the opportunity to do your daily work, but also participate in some of those events. And so I think that it's always something good to attend at least some sessions, because it always inspires you to look at your stuff again and remember that we can always go back and do process improvements. Even if you're not doing a formal Lean event, there's always ways to improve. And that's all I have for today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tony.
What do we have our new DEI person focus on now? Is it still just internal and right now?
Well, he has met with a lot of internal people thus far. He has also met with Dr. Johnson and myself and Director Garza. We have had one meeting. We have another meeting, I think even this week, to continue our discussions with her. And he is going to give a presentation to the whole agency on January 12th.
Okay.
About we'll make sure that you guys are invited and proceed from there.
Thank you.
And just note, I saw Jim briefly the other day, and he said he's reaching out to all the board members as well, Member Garrett, to sit down with us on one-on-one to catch us up to some of those conversations too. So, he's drinking water from the fire hose. So, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Tony. And to close it out, Rick Garza, our director, for some general director's comments. Hello.
Good afternoon. Ollie, thanks for the question, because we just met with Jim a couple days ago and felt that typically we don't have webinars with the entire agency, but just as a highlight, I've got Anita and Tony and Jim working on a presentation where we'll share the importance of this new position of DEI with the agency. We'll talk, and then we'll have that opportunity. And that's why, as David said, Jim is reaching out to both of you and Russ to meet individually, because I was not aware that had not happened yet, but just learned that a couple days ago, so that you'll see all of the internal and external component of the work that we'll be doing, because I know we've talked about that for quite some time. So it's great to have Jim here. Also, you can catch the high level of activity that's going on throughout the agency, both cross-divisional and then with our stakeholders. I just continue to compliment the team for that cross-divisional communication and coordination, which has been lacking years past, but you can see what's happening. I was on the, okay, Becky, I don't want your head to get too big here, but I was at the licensing division meeting, and if you're from Thurston County, Forelli's, everybody knows Forelli's. It's a pizzeria that's been around forever. And Becky was able to get the owner, Jackie Farrell. And I think the person that helped manages the restaurant, especially the beverage portion of it. And I had no idea they'd grown. They're actually opening 2 more places in Silverdale and Yelm. I don't know if they're going to go from 5 to 7 or 7 to 9. But I'll tell you, really good. This is where things are changing, really, in the way that we work with our stakeholders. Not only did Becky ask the question, but also licensing staff asked the question of the licensees, how could we better serve you? Are there gaps in service? When Becky asked that question, I specifically wrote that down because I thought it was impressive. Jackie said they've made 7 licensing changes since the pandemic, 7 of them, and none of them had any issues. And so just being very specific about asking the question is just very impressive. So, to the whole team and everyone for the work that's happening together, you can see that not only is the agency and the employees seeing that, but Becky said something that's really important. Our employees oftentimes, that's why it was good to bring them to the divisional meeting, don't get to hear the things that we hear from our stakeholders about the work that they're doing. And they're doing the work, it's not us. And so I just think that's just a great way to make sure that we're always connected with our licensees. Also on Monday, we all came together, the leadership of staff, to have our second strategic planning session, and David was present. We have 4 goals in our strategic plan, just so everyone remembers. It's a 5-year plan, 2019 through 2024. We just haven't had the time due to the pandemic to get in there and start reviewing that. So we've got 4 goals, and within those 4 goals are many strategies. We went through 3 and 4. I thought it was a really productive meeting. The idea is now to begin to work on the strategies and the action plans around that. As we get closer to, I want to say, I guess, a final draft of what that's going to look like, obviously we'll need to sit down with the board and walk through that document. And it also, in my mind, reminds me of even before David's with us, when Jane was with us, Ollie, that we had created Cannabis 2.0, and that we had also created 3 specific priorities of the board and the agency that continue to be in front of us. One is, how do we make more medically compliant product available because of the concerns we've heard from the patient community? Number 2, how do we help the smaller growers in the cannabis space in our state? You've already, and then of course, social equity. And I share with you that we have begun the work of doing all of those. And I want to mention it because in our discussions, whether it's strategic planning or the discussion that we had of the agency policy work group, we were reminded, and I think it was Chris or Justin reminding us of what our priorities are, and that the board had made it clear that making medically compliant product available is one of our priorities. So, sometimes we don't always get around, but recognize that when we're having discussions, these priorities that you identified several years ago, we still have work to do in all of them. And I'm pretty impressed with the team, because in every instance of those, you can see we're making progress. So I've talked enough, I'll stop there, but just wanted to share that information with you.
Yeah, I would add, Rick, that I was impressed too, not just because there was progress, but also because of the acknowledgement and really the challenge that we gave each other for where we're not doing enough. And you're right about the medically compliant conversation. That was a really good one. People just spoke up and said, here we are, and this is, again, we're just updating what exists. This isn't the whole formation of a whole new plan. So it's within that scheme, but there's candor, there's self-examination, there's some self-criticism, and continuing commitment to really being able to show even more progress. Those are 3 huge and frankly ongoing eternal conversations. but we know we need to do more. Some are better than others. We have a lot of work to do. We're in a good place to make big steps on several of those, I think, in the coming year. I did want to, again, I think you were listening for the board meeting this morning, Rick. Did you get it? I thought Mr. Manning said something that is worth keeping in mind. He said, expressing his frustration on the lack of action on equity, and he was pointing the finger more at the social equity task force, but asking us to act. He said, appreciate that, you're having these conversations, that you're engaged, but I don't want to come and just have conversations with you about equity and how to make it equitable. I want to come and talk about cannabis. And I forget exactly the example he used, but sort of like we were talking about THC rules today. We were talking about quality testing today. And he was sort of saying, that's what I want to do. And that's a great thing for me. It's like, that's a good measure of success. As he put it, when Black and brown people are sitting down and talking to us about those issues, because he said, I come and watch, and it's mostly, white people having these conversations, and then we come and do this. And it's like, it was just an interesting illustration of that, which is, let me come and talk about solvents. I want to be here around the table talking about what artificial means versus synthetic. So I just thought I would
good point.
Show some appreciation, and it's worth for us keeping that in mind, I thought. So, and I think that's it. Ollie, anything to add or questions for Rick? Okay. We will, anything else, Rick, from you or anybody else on your team? I'll make a call for final comments.
Not for me, thank you.
No? Okay. Well, thank you to all the directors. Appreciate your preparation for bringing your reports and data here. We'll do it again soon. I really do. I'm sure some people listen and go, boy, all y'all do is talk about how good of a job you're doing. We just happen to be doing a really good job right now. I know there's a lot of work to be done. We have a big task with CCRS, and to keep it going. Equity is yet to be delivered to us. We have so much to do, but I just want you to know, Rick, that you and your team really, you're firing on all cylinders. I really, really like hearing licensees tell us they're getting what they need. They don't always agree, and they're clear. Even some of that, really great praise we heard at the Alcohol Advisory Council. That doesn't mean we have no disagreements with you on policy or practice. It means I'm heard, it's accessible, it's a cogent policy that you're implementing. We disagree with it. And I just think that's a great place for us to be.
Yeah.
So maybe the success of that too is the fact that AAC, you hear them wanting to meet with us more often. And
I know it's true. Yep.
And so that means it's working to me anyway.
And we need to find ways to keep that going, get the cannabis industry in here more in different ways we can, and keep hearing from people. I think licensees are starting to realize that we are very accessible. Me and the other board members hear from licensees on occasion in different ways, sometimes all three of us, sometimes one-on-one or individually. We just need to keep encouraging that. So keep it up. It's great. All right. And with that, we will adjourn the executive management team for today, and we will be back. We have a caucus next week, so we'll see you all then. Bye, Ollie.